Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Hi, Dawn.
Hello.
Hello.
Evening, everybody.
Oh, hello.
Good evening, everyone. I've got 6 o'clock. Let's continue our September 9th regular board meeting and convene our regular meeting and do a summary of action taken during our closed session, which began at 5 p.m. Mr. Davis.
Yes, thank you, President Hahn. There's one reportable action under item 3A, the Edmonds matter. The board unanimously voted to reject a request for defense and indemnity by Mr. Edmonds in the district suit against him. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's stand for a pledge of allegiance, please. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Before I ask for approval of the agenda, just a quick reminder that Saturday is September 11th, also known as Patriot Day. It's the 20th anniversary of those vicious attacks on our country. On September 11th, our flag will be flown at half staff. The Bear Valley Veterans Group is having a ceremony at 08:30 on Saturday, September 11th. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion by Jay, and I heard a second by Terry. Ms. McEwen, roll call vote.
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Vice President Quinn,
Aye.
President Hahn.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. We have a staff introduction tonight. Bear Valley Police Officer, Jacinto Rivera. Did I get it right?
Mr. President, he prefers to go by Jay.
Jay Rivera.
And Jay is one of our newest officers, and unfortunately had a family situation arise, and so can't be here, which may be just as well, because I would certainly hope he could be introduced in person to the board and the rest of the staff and the public. So our apologies, but we will reschedule this.
Okay, no problem. Item 9, public comments on non-agenda items. Ms. McEwen.
Okay. Members of the public may address the board on matters not listed on this agenda. The board cannot take action on any item that is not on the agenda. The board or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed, or may ask questions for clarification. These items may also be referred to staff or scheduled on a future agenda. There will be a separate opportunity for public comment for each item on the agenda. Okay, let me see what I've got here. I have one raised hand. Get my. Okay, and that would be Jiva.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Hello.
Jiva here. Since the transfer station has been voted in, Bill, you were going to have further negotiations, as you said, with Field Rep Andres. I was wondering, what is the status of that? If you can give anything regarding any additional recycling, the e-waste that we're talking about, any cost reductions you said you were working on for the transfer station. Could you give any comments on that and who we're working with towards that? Thank you, Bill.
Okay, I have no other hands at this time.
All right, appreciate the comment, Jiva. Item 10, consent calendar. Ms. McHugh.
Consent items, sorry, let me get settled here. Consent items are considered routine and are intended to be acted upon in one motion without discussion. During this portion of the meeting, the consent calendar will be read aloud. Prior to approval, the president will give the board, staff, and public the opportunity to pull any item for discussion. The remaining calendar will be acted upon. Any pulled items will then be heard and acted upon individually. A, approve minutes of the July 8, 2021 regular board meeting. Approve minutes of the July 29, 2021 special board meeting. Accept the quarterly investment report as of June 30, 2021. Accept the monthly investment report as of July 31, 2021. Accept register of warrants for July 2021. Accept register of warrants for August 2021. Approve request from Bear Valley Springs Association for Mulligan Room Patio Project in accordance with plans submitted in compliance with all conditions of approval required under the lease. H, approve request for Bear Valley Springs Association for Oak Tree Country Club drive-through lane project in accordance with plans submitted in compliance with all conditions of approval required under the lease.
Thank you, Christy. Does any board member have anything to pull? Director Carlin? I can't see everyone on the screen with the
No.
with the share screen. Thank you, Director Grace.
I'd like to pull item G for discussion.
G is pulled. Director Jensen
None.
and Vice President Quinn.
Also, item H, please.
H and G are pulled. Any members of the public like to pull an item?
I have one hand. Jiva.
Thank you, Christy. On the draft, for the minutes on 28, you had noted at the bottom that you added the 4 items, that were going to be talked at the 29th meeting, but that seems to be after the fact, because on the 29th, it didn't note those items. That's why, we had made a comment about it the 29th. So I was wondering if that was really appropriate. And then also on the July 29th, 9A, 5 members spoke, you noted, but it didn't say whether they're in agreement or disagreement, or they're asking for further investigation. There's no content as to that. Also on 10C, there was multiple questions, so I don't know if it's not appropriate or more informative, transparent to say that people were asking specific types of questions to be looked into regarding the work plow trucks expense. And then the same thing with 10D on the skip loader, no reference to comments by the public. So it looks as if the public had no concerns whatsoever. So I would ask those to be corrected. Thank you.
So are we pulling that item on the agenda? Are those pending changes, or do we need to pull that item? Are you asking us to pull an item off the consent calendar, Jiva?
Let me.
Yes, I would appreciate those being corrected.
And it was the minutes of July 29th special board meeting.
And then July 28th, I think it had the added notes that weren't there originally. So I thought the agenda should look just the same as it was published.
Okay, so we're pulling items B, Bravo, G, Golf, H, Hotel. May I have a motion to approve items A, C, D, E, and S?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Carlin. Christie, please.
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Vice President Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye as well. That carries 5-0. So then do we take item Bravo and take them in order and discuss those?
If the board wants the minutes amended, that would
Got it.
be the motion.
All right. So Jiva has expressed her concern about the board meeting minutes for the July 29th, item B. Board, what's your pleasure? Director Carlin,
I would make the changes.
make changes. Okay. Director Grace,
Likewise, I would agree.
right. Director Jensen,
Yeah, I would support that.
Vice President Quinn.
I'm an A, thank you.
All right. 5-0 to make those amendments. Did you catch them all, or should we have you and Jiva meet afterwards to get those? Did you get them all, Christie?
I'll look into it.
Great. All right, Jiva, we'll take care of that. Item G, this is the Mulligan Room request. Director Carlin, I think, pulled this one.
No, I didn't.
Grace.
That was me, Mr. President.
Director Grace, go ahead, please.
I just had a couple of quick questions of Bill. And Bill, I don't know if we have a representative from the association here to speak to this, but I'll send the question through you. The permit application was initially submitted under signature of the owner, but the board, or rather the CSD, has not executed that, and we are in fact the owner. Do we know if members of the association are amenable to either providing a letter of authorization or amending the application with us as the signatory as property owner? It just needs, in my opinion, it needs to be cleaned up.
Sure, Mr. President, members of the board, you're accurate about the application. Part of what has occurred is, I think, a clarification with the county confirming that we are the owner, and so the county will not issue the permit, and this is for the roof at the Mulligan Room patio, without our consent. And which brings up a point that the board, if you approve that, I think should give me some further direction to act to give that release when that permit's ready. But nonetheless, I don't know that it needs cleaning up. I think effectively we've got it under control, if you will. The county has put a stop on the issuance of the permit until they hear from the CSD.
So I would then ask, how is that memorialized if we're not changing, if we're not either providing a letter or changing the application? How is that?
Well, I think
With the county, how is it memorialized?
Sure. It's memorialized within their system that they will not issue pending notification from the CSD. And I think my point for the board's direction may suggest that you direct me to provide such written authorization for the county to issue that permit when all things have been satisfied.
So we're saying the same thing. It's basically rather than a letter of authorization to initiate the permit, it's a letter of authorization to issue the permit. So
That would be correct, yes.
okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mr. President, on that item, and I do have another question, but on that one, I would request a motion from the board or an action from the board to so direct Mr. Malanen to provide such a document.
Okay, I don't think we can. We could
Whatever
probably
action
say-
is appropriate.
I think we could say approve the request from Bear Valley and direct our general manager. Can we add that to the agenda today, or is that inappropriate?
Mr. President, I would give some deference to the general counsel, but I think the direction, this is the title. There would be a motion made by someone, and I think it's appropriate if you wish to elaborate on the motion so it is more concise or clear. I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, I agree.
Mr. President, if I may, I think that this goes to sort of the heart of the issue, why it's on the calendar in the first place, is I think the lease is very clear that under section 16B, prior to initiating improvements, our consent's required. And I think the hope is in the future, the BVSA is very interesting because their form actually has a district consent checkbox on it, that they come get that approval, and then they could have submitted the application, and we would have had the corrected owner application in with the county if the process had been followed, the way it's spelled out in the lease.
Okay, right. So if after our discussion, we get this to go, I would ask that the motion be to approve the request from Bear Valley and direct the general manager to release the project if the board decides. Great. Any other, who did I got? Director Grace, Director Jensen?
Mr. President, I did have one other question.
Please go, sir. Yeah.
Bill, I know that the association intends to self-perform this work. Do we know if the individuals performing the work are licensed contractors?
I do not.
We
Mr.
do.
President?
Mr. President, we do have, I think I saw in attendance, and we had asked General Manager Shryock to be here. So I see Wesley's, or he was in here.
Yeah, his
There he
name
is,
is,
at the top of the list. So perhaps he can answer your question.
let's turn it over to Mr. Schreier.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Indeed.
Excellent. How are you, Mr. Grace?
I'm good. Thank you, sir. How about yourself?
Excellent. Thank you for asking. Okay, I'm going to jump in and answer that particular question. Yeah, we're self-performing it under the direction of our acquired licensed contractor, under the direction of our licensed engineer, and a second engineer handling the commercial electric aspect of it. So we're covered under all three aspects of that.
That is a great answer. Thank you so much. That alleviates my concerns. And Mr. President, I have no further comment.
Thank you for that, Director Grace. Director Jensen?
I have no questions.
Yes, sir. Vice President Quinn?
Thank you, Greg. I really wanted to say something about this at the liaison meeting on Tuesday, but that would have made it a board meeting, and of course I couldn't do that. And I don't want to flog the case tonight either. I think it's been gone over a good deal, but a couple of things need to be stressed, I believe. First of all, I want on record that the Bear Valley Springs Association has no better friend on this board of directors than I. Given my history in the Valley and my work on the board previously. However, COVID did not render the lease inoperative, and there is no reason that something could not have been conveyed to this board through a bill, even though there were no liaison meetings. For example, the ECC has a provision for sympathetic approval, so it did not need to be the complete package. As it is, we are getting this information late and kind of sketchy, you know? It comes down to an ex post facto approval of work that's already been done. I'll vote to approve it, but I just hope we never see it this way again. Thank you.
I think
President,
yes, Mr. Mellon.
if I might, we did have our liaison meeting. I thought it went very well. on a number of different fronts. It was good for us, and that would be President Hahn and Director Jansen and us, our staff with Westland and board members. As this topic came up, there was discussion about, process procedure. I think and this has been a conversation between Wesley and I for some time, but we need to really develop the process and the procedures for the association to follow to get that board consent. And we'll do that. And I think we can present that to both boards. We can work through it and make it pretty clear, the when and the why, and then, okay, how does this process through? So I think we can answer some of the either issues or concerns people may have about this and move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Malinan. I think we're ready maybe for motion on item G, the 2 parts.
Mr. President, I would move to approve request from Bear Valley Springs Association for Mulligan Room Patio Project in accordance with plans submitted in compliance with all conditions of approval required under the lease.
And
Second.
then I move to modify and direct General Manager Mallon
Correct. Thank you.
to release this project at the county level.
And I'll second that one as well.
Okay, is it motion as amended? Okay, Director Grace?
Indeed. Thank you.
That's a motion by Director Grace, a second by Director Carlin. Ms. McEwen?
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Vice President Quinn,
Aye.
President Hahn.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Item H was pulled by Director Quinn, Vice President Quinn, I think.
I'm sorry, what do you say?
Item H was also pulled, and we have for discussion on item H, but I don't remember if it was Terry or Jay.
It was mine,
Okay,
but I said my piece.
this is about the drive-through.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good on that. I got you. You wanted to pull it to discuss the procedure, and I got it.
Exactly.
Then a motion to move consent for item H.
So moved to approve.
Second.
I've got a motion by Jay, second by Quinn. Ms. McEwen?
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Vice President Quinn,
Aye.
President Hahn.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. So we have all items on the consent calendar approved except for item B. Bravo will bring that later at a later meeting. Item 11, direct disclosures by board of directors. Ms. McEwen?
President Hahn, Mr. Shryock's hand is up. I don't know if he wanted to say something before we go on to the next.
That's fine. Wes, did you have something to add?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for allotting me a few minutes. I just wanted to express my thanks and my strong resolve to make sure that procedurally we get to a point where we can do all these extremely beneficial improvements as a co-op. So I'll be the first to take ownership and responsibility over not having an ideal process for these two, and also want to take some ownership and responsibility over making sure we do moving forward. So thank you to the board, Mr. President, Vice President, and hopefully we have many more of these in a much different fashion.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Shryock. I second that. I appreciate that, those comments. Now, item 11, disclosures by board of directors. Ms. McEwen?
Board members are asked to disclose any outside communications with individuals and organizations that have an action item on this agenda that pertains directly to them or their specific personal or private interests, and which communication is not included or disclosed in the agenda package, so that all interested persons have an equal opportunity to express and represent their interests.
Anyone have anything to disclose? Speak up, please.
No.
Hearing none.
No.
Hearing none. Action items number 12. A, authorize first amendment to professional services agreement with Davey Resource Group to provide registered professional forester services for the CALFIRE fuel reduction grant program. Mr. Mallon, please.
Mr. President, members of the board, as you, I think, know, the fuel reduction program funded by a CALFIRE grant has been moving very quickly and moving very well. What had been estimated to be a 3-year project is probably still going to be completed within a year. But part of what we anticipated, the need for the forester and their involvement, I think, was and has been greater than initially estimated. And so we're reaching the end of our existing contract authorization, and we're asking the board to increase it by $15,000 to an amount not to exceed 60. Those additional funds still will be funded from within the grant, and we can make budget amendments to the grant. And so it's not out of the district's pocketbook, if you will, but is a part of the grant process. I do think it's worked very smoothly. People have commented to us that they've done a great job out there. They're currently on pause as the concern about wildfires and the dryness of the area, but they expect to be back in another month or so. And so we'll be off and running again. We currently have, I think this says 208. I had asked today, it should be about 225 acres already done. We've expended approximately 500,000 of the grant funds for the work, and I think it's going very well. But we do want to get this hopefully so that we can keep working with the Davey Resource Group as our forester. I think it's an important piece of the system to have someone knowledgeable enough to know what level of service and trimming, if you will, needs to be done on a particular property, and to work with the logger. And we have a pretty good system of authorizations and sign-offs to make sure it's all being done correctly. And I think that is probably part 2 of where some of the costs were higher than initially anticipated. So we would recommend approval as presented.
Thank you for that. Comments from the public on this item?
There are no hands.
Director Carlin.
Don't have any questions on this one. Thank you.
Director Grace.
Bill, I know we talked about it in our briefing, but this will, and I apologize if I missed it in your presentation, but this will get us to the end, you feel?
And I talked with Davey Resources today, and they thought it could, yes. So because most of the work was kind of preloaded at the front to get procedures and things together, they think it will. Our monthly invoices have been much less. So that is our hope, and I've talked with them so that they know where we're at. And if not, certainly we'll be letting you know. But we did have to put a number in, and so this is somewhat self-selected.
Understood.
But it will certainly extend us into next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Jensen.
No questions.
Vice President Quinn.
I have nothing.
Nothing from me. Entertain a motion on item 8.
I move that the board of directors authorize the first amendment to the professional services agreement with Davey Resource Group to increase the budget by $15,000 to a total not to exceed amount of $60,000.
Second.
Motion by Director Quinn, second by Director Jensen. Ms. McEwen, roll call.
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Vice President Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Item Bravo, adopt resolution 21/22-10 approving fiscal year 2021/22 investment policy. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, President Han. Under the California Government Code, the district is required to annually review and adopt the district's investment policy. It was last adopted in September 2020, 1 year ago. Staff reviewed the policy and reviewed the investment section of the California Government Code, and there was only one change that was needed, and that was just adding a 10% limitation under the investment category for medium-term notes. And this limitation would be that you cannot invest more than 10% of the portfolio in any one single issuer. So that has been added to the investment policy. The policy overall is in compliance with the California Government Code, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Comments from the public.
There are none.
Director Carlin.
Good change on the 10% of diversification, like that one. Other than that, nothing.
Thank you, sir. Director Grace.
I had no questions, sir.
Director Jensen.
No questions, sir.
Vice President Quinn.
No questions, thank you.
And none for me. Let's hear a motion for this.
Move the board adopt resolution 21-22-10 approving fiscal year 2021-22 investment policy.
Second.
Motion by Director Carlin, second by Director Grace. Ms. McEwen.
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Vice President Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Action item Charlie, adopt resolution 21/22-11, authorizing the execution and delivery of an installment sale agreement and authorizing and directing certain actions in connection with the acquisition of public works work plow trucks. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, President Han. At the July 29th board meeting, the board authorized the purchase of the 3 work/plow trucks not to exceed $300,000 with financing from the Municipal Finance Corporation. Staff has now brought forward the loan documents involved in this borrowing, and so primarily authorizing the installment sale agreement for the acquisition of the work/plow trucks. The terms of the loan would be 7 years. And again, principal amount not to exceed $300,000, and the interest rate is 2.6%. Over the life of this would result in interest payments of just over $32,000 and a total repayment, including the principal, of $332,000. This would equate to 7 equal installment payments of $47,428.63 each fiscal year. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Comments from the public?
I have Jiva.
Jiva?
Oh, thank you, Hamad. So those 7 payments, the first payment would be upon the purchase, is that correct?
No, actually. So the first payment would be due 1 year after the funding. So if funding takes place within the next month, then our first payment would be a year from the funding date.
Which means that we'd be paying additional interest over that period instead of putting a principal only down and saving on interest each year, correct?
Yes, I mean, you would accrue interest from the time that it's borrowed.
Is that standard how we do things?
Yes.
Is that something we can look at doing where we're saving ourselves some interest? I know it'd be 1/7 of 32,000, but every bit's supposed to help, correct?
Yeah, it would just depend on I guess the board desire and I believe there is a prepayment option on this. Sometimes with that there would be a redemption premium. If you're going to pay it down early, you may have to pay an extra 2% or something like that.
Okay. So yeah, I'd appreciate that being looked at. And you said not to exceed 2.6. At the last meeting, there was references to there being loans out there 1.9. We're getting a loan for 1.9. I don't know. Does that not apply to special districts?
Well, I can tell you that the one of the perks of us being a member of the CSDA is we have this mechanism to go through. Municipal Finance Corporation basically acts on our behalf as a special district. They go out to the market and look at either small banks or large banks that are lending for this type of to a government agency. And this was the most competitive rate. The other advantages are We don't have to pay for an underwriter. We don't have to pay for bond counsel or financial advisor. It's all kind of wrapped into the program.
So you know what that value is then?
I mean, I don't have the exact numbers, but there's certainly costs involved with bond counsel or underwriters, all of that.
Okay, because that would be beneficial to understand in this interest rate being a little bit higher than what I can go out and get, The other thing, there's other questions asked about these purchases. And it was noted that going through the tables when you evaluated the vehicles for mileage, cost of maintenance, also environmental laws that had to be met with, EPA, that it was around 32, 33 was the number that would give you a basis to start replacement. But, and we have 3, but we're not replacing vehicles. We're adding to our existing inventory. Is that not correct?
That's
This
correct.
is 3 minutes here, so you can go ahead.
Are we replacing trucks? I think we are. We have really old trucks that I watched them work last winter and they were terrible. They don't do the job.
We're not replacing them. They're keeping them.
Well, putting them in service. You're right. Okay.
Mr. President, and unfortunately, but Mr. Wiggins is not available for our meeting with a family issue. But we are adding these. The issue with the existing fleet is they do not have the capabilities to do what we need to get done relative to plowing. So we will keep them, but we can't continue to try to plow with them. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Jiva. Director Carlin?
I have
No.
one more hand from the public.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I don't see that. Well, I'll get that.
Fred.
Mr. Hicks.
Well, thank you for hearing me. I have about the same question I had on from the last meeting on this. In this agenda packet, we have a very detailed quote for a skip loader. But we seem to be missing a very detailed quote for these 3 trucks. And there was not a detailed quote for from the last agenda on July 29th. I'm still not understanding exactly what we're buying. I'm not disagreeing with the price. It sounds like they're diesel trucks. You've got, spreaders that are going in the back, but there is no way to actually quantify what we're purchasing outside of $300,000 approved for trucks. And I would like to know, is that going to be quantified at some point? So we do have some detailed record like the skip loader quote that's in here, so we know what we're buying as a public.
President, we do have that. I'm sure Public Works, Mr. Wiggins can provide that. They are 550s, Ford 550s, and I think they've been purchased through the Joint Powers Authority. So the vendor, I don't recall the vendor's name, but that's how they were purchased. And so they're 550s with the equipment for plow and spreader.
I guess my question is, why are we not including a detailed quote in any of the agendas when we're approving a $300,000 purchase, but for an $80,000 skip loader, we have a very detailed quote?
Mr. President, for what it's worth, Mr. Hicks, after our last meeting, staff discussed this item and recognized we didn't have.
Hey, Bill. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Board meeting.
Sorry. We didn't have enough information. So hopefully you're recognizing that we are making that effort to be even more forthcoming about details for what we're purchasing. So it frankly is something we worked on after that last meeting when the purchases were approved.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Okay.
Now,
No more.
Mr. Carlin.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks,
Sorry.
sir. Director Grace,
I had no questions.
Director Jensen.
Yeah, just adding on a couple of things that I said last time. As a government agency, aren't we supposed to receive at least 2 or 3 bids from various sources for purchases like this?
Mr. President, one of the approaches that we are able to use, because we are members of a joint powers authority, and in this case, it's called Sourcewell, we can piggyback and or use what they've already done. So they go through that process of requesting bids. We can also do it through the state. And they go through all of that process and effectively meet that criteria for procurement of getting multiple bids and then selecting the lowest. And then with those pricings, we get to use that pricing. So that's what we've been doing. Frankly, as much as we can, the pricing is really good. And then we're not having to go through the work ourselves. So that's hopefully answering your question.
But without seeing actual bids and vehicles and options and what's on them, we have no idea if those are good prices or not.
Well,
as a board, we don't know. We haven't seen anything. All we've
sure.
seen is a request for $300,000.
Sure. So part of the process, I suspect we could go and inquire of the Sourcewells or the state for various pieces of equipment we're interested in. They may provide that to us, but typically what you'll have is whatever that type of equipment is. I think from a staff perspective, our folks will go out and ask the Ford dealer what they charge for that piece of equipment, and it'll be more. And so we go with that lower price JPA purchase, having done not a formal bid process because that's already been done for us, but at least kind of verify that, yeah, you'd spend 20 grand more if you went over to the Ford dealership than if we bought it through this association.
And that's all fine and good, but you know, it leaves us to where we are. We've seen nothing. We haven't seen any of this.
Mr. President, the board approved the purchase at the last meeting. This is the finance.
Director Benson,
I have nothing further.
Vice President Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of items for Hamed. First one was that business about the interest rate that Jiva brought up. I have a feeling if she were buying a 550 four-wheel drive that was capable of doing this kind of work, she probably would not be getting a 1.9 retail interest rate, just a guess. You know, this is obviously heavy-duty equipment, and it's the expectation is it's going to be a workhorse. The other item was on the acquisition fund. On paragraph 4, I think Hamed might have already kind of answered this, where it says excessive monies in the acquisition fund following the final distribution, a disbursement from the acquisition fund at the end of the acquisition period or termination of the acquisition fund as otherwise provided herein, the custodian shall transfer any remainder from the acquisition fund to the corporation or to the district at the corporation's written direction for application to amounts owed under the installment sale in accordance with section 5 or section 6 of the installment sale. Well, it says, you know, following the final disbursement. What does that mean? Unless we're really talking about prepayment and we're saving some interest. Is that what that it comes from? Or
so I think what that section is implying is if, let's say, the costs end up coming in a little bit under 300,000, or by the time maybe the loan is funded and the disbursement maybe is made sometime after, there may be some interest that accrues to that acquisition fund where the funds are being held. And so if there's any leftover money after the purchase is complete, then that money would go towards paying down that loan. But it may only be, $1,000 or a couple $1,000.
Okay, all right. So it's an extraordinary situation, probably, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So I appreciate the people who are concerned about the pennies. Even the tens and thousands of dollars, I totally get it. I know for a fact that our current snowplow fleet is woefully inadequate. If there are objections to this purchase, I'd like the people who object to ask themselves, if it was $5,000 less per truck, would then you be okay with it? Or are you just opposed to spending any money at all? Knowing that we have checks and balances in this process, I'm okay with proceeding. This is a formality to adopt the agreement. So those are my final comments. Do I hear a motion for this item?
Mr. President, I move the Board of Directors adopt Resolution 21/22-11, authorizing the execution and delivery of an installment sale agreement and authorizing and directing certain actions in connection with the acquisition of work/plow trucks.
Second,
Motion by Director Grace, second, I think was Vice President Quinn. Ms. McEwen?
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
No,
Vice President Quinn,
aye.
President Han.
Aye. Motion carries 4-1 with Director Jensen in dissent. Item D, Delta, adopt resolution 21/22-12, adopting the updated Kern multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan. Chief Kermode.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As the board may be aware, the work on the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan has been going on for at least a couple of years. In fact, when I was last with the district, I sat on the committee that assessed the various vendors that they were going to select from at the county level to prepare this plan. So it's been underway for quite some time. The plan has been completed. The first wave of approvals had already gone through Cal OES and FEMA, and our annex to the plan went through in the second wave of approvals. And at this point, FEMA has deemed the plan itself and the 36 annex plans for 36 separate jurisdictions as being approvable pending adoption. So what's before us tonight is to approve the hazard mitigation plan itself, which is the huge document that you had an online link to, as well as the Bear Valley annex to that document. The difference between the two documents is the plan itself is the umbrella, and it talks about the process, it talked about the standards, it talks about hazards that all jurisdictions within the county have in common and what the mitigation strategy should be for those county-wide hazards. Whereas our annex is specific to Bear Valley. Bear Valley had input into determining what the hazards were here in Bear Valley. Bear Valley had input into the mitigation strategies that are present in the plan. You might ask the same question that Mr. Malinan asked me after reading our annex. We have a large natural gas line that comes right through Bear Valley, but it's not addressed in our annex. That's because mitigation strategies related to that pipeline are a countywide issue. So earthquake and fire and such that would relate to that pipeline are addressed in the umbrella document, the plan itself. At this point, once we're one of the final agencies to bring the resolution for adoption, because we did not have an August meeting. So last I heard, if the board chooses to adopt the resolution, then very quickly, the final documents will be sent to FEMA and formal approval will be granted for the plan. There's no fiscal downside to the adoption of the plan. In fact, it's just the opposite. If we're operating under an approved hazard mitigation plan, then we become eligible for the FEMA hazard mitigation grants, which we have obtained those grants in the past. If this plan is approved, it's then in good standing for the next 5 years. And typically there's one round of grants each year during the life of the plan. In today's EOC workshop that we conducted with CSD staff and DPAC, we identified several possibilities for equipment that could be purchased under the mitigation plan. So certainly staff's recommendation is that the board approve the resolution adopting both the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan as well as the Bear Valley Annex to that plan. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Public?
There are none.
Thank you. Director Carlin?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Director Grace?
Chief, just procedurally, you mentioned if we adopt the resolutions, the two resolutions, or the one resolution, the two actions, we are then considered approved for our beneficiary for any grants. So we do not need to wait on the other member jurisdictions to vote or to approve?
As of my communication at the end of last week, we are one of the last agencies to bring the item forward. So
that's the part. Yeah, I thought I had heard that. I just needed some clarification. Okay.
Yes, they'll also be submitted as one batch. And once that's been turned in, I guess it's only a matter of weeks for FEMA to grant the final approval. And they've already released some preliminary information about the upcoming mitigation grant program, but the deadline for applications will occur well after the adoption takes place.
Gotcha. So we're the holdout that everybody else is waiting on.
Pretty much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Jensen?
I have no questions, sir.
Thank you, sir. Vice President Quinn?
Nothing, thank you.
This is an impressive document, folks, if you haven't read it in the audience. Extremely impressive. Thousands and thousands of people worked on this, hours of man hours. I didn't want to say man hours because a lot of women worked on it too. Great. Board, what's your pleasure?
I move the Board of Directors adopt Resolution 21/22-12, adopting the updated Kern multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan, Volume 1, and the BVCSD Annex as approved by FEMA and Cal OES as the official mitigation plan for the Bear Valley Community Service District.
Second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Carlin. Ms. McEwen?
Director Carlin?
Aye.
Director Grace?
Aye.
Director Jensen?
Aye.
Vice President Quinn?
Aye.
President Han?
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Item E, Echo, approve purchase of Public Works skip loader. Mr. Mellon.
Mr. President, members of the board, a skip loader is effectively a smaller type front end loader tractor with a little more capabilities in the sense of attachments that you can put onto it that you can't put onto a front loader, as an example. You may recall in July, we came to the board, we had a used piece of equipment. There were some excellent questions. We went back to try to answer those, i.e., the logs and so on, the maintenance, etc. Well, in the ensuing time, we've come across literally a brand new model for, I'll say, slightly more. And that's what you have before you here. We budgeted $60,000 in our budget for a skip loader. We again are looking at utilizing Sourcewell, and in this case, they've provided an even better discount because we're in Kern County. And so for the total of $80,680.45, we can purchase a brand new one as opposed to what had been a several-year-old used model last time. These are diesel, they're tier 4 in terms of air emissions. The size of them is better for us. We used to have one years ago and we haven't for some time. I know, as I've talked with Daniel regarding roads and stormwater, we are intent on doing what we're supposed to, and this will allow us to get into our easements and our ditches and things that we otherwise can't do with our existing equipment. So part of that utilization is really important. So we will make some budget adjustments, but in this situation, I do think it's warranted because it is a brand new piece of equipment that should last us many years. Our front loader, as you know, is a 15-year-old model. We've budgeted in our CIP to replace that eventually as well. But in the meantime, we'll get great use out of this for virtually all of our departments. So we'll answer any questions. And again, unfortunately, Mr. Wiggins is not here, but Daniel is. So if Mr. Haggard can answer questions, he'll do so. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public?
Fred Hicks.
Mr. Hicks?
Hello, I wanted to thank you for providing a very detailed quote. I think this going into the future would be ideal for all products that the board is looking to purchase. It was very easy to read, very easy to see, and I think it's a great investment, and I think it'll be used by all the departments, and I think it's definitely needed. Like the plow trucks, I don't disagree with them. I just think we need to explain it, and I think this is a great example of a bid that was done and given to the board packet appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public?
Jiva.
Jiva, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Fred on that and was looking for this kind of detail on the other purchase. So these are, what schedule are these going to be on a replacement? Like, are they 5 years, 10 years, and the other equipment?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I guess I would answer it by saying, as we acquire it and we give that specific item thought, we'll begin to slot it into our 20-year CIP. So I would expect this will have way more than 5 years use. I'll leave that up to the folks that use it, know it better, but I can see this going out numerous years. So we'll schedule its replacement after we had a chance to kind of come up with the answer. So unless Dawn or Daniel have a better answer than that.
Well, but you already have plow trucks probably that weren't on a scheduled replacement, but you've been looking at them as you've given them a value before. So those previous plow trucks, that are not equivalent to this new one, understandable. Were they not on a schedule, or had they been put on a schedule since you've been working this bill?
Yeah, no, there was no schedule. So maybe that's the context in which we all need to understand these acquisitions are, because the equipment that we're running is all, and if you go back to that equipment replacement policy that the board approved, virtually everything we own is due to be replaced, with the exception of the police vehicles, the four-wheel or all-wheel drive. Those are about the only things that aren't due to be replaced. But the
Oh,
point is,
okay.
we didn't have a replacement schedule before. That's part of what we're doing to do a better job.
Okay, so these are going to be allocated mainly to the water and road primarily, and if they get used by another department, then that use will be allocated appropriately.
Well, currently, our system, pardon me, our system does allocation not based on use. That's a more sophisticated thing that we're going to have to work towards, because now you're getting into hour meters and things like that on equipment. So currently, I think we've said that we'll share some of the costs of this one. When we start looking at the replacement, I think that's where we'll begin to start looking at allocations. So my answer is we have the wherewithal for our personnel costs, but not so much our equipment costs on some hourly basis.
Well, thank you, because I think that should be looked into. Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate Jiva. Public,
Kara Cooper.
Ms. Cooper,
Hi, how are you doing?
doing great. Welcome.
Okay, I was just wondering what would why aren't we exploring a lease option on some of these, due to the fact that the state regulations are constantly changing? And I think maybe even just a few years down the line, they might say, hey, everything must be all electric. Maybe we should start looking at leasing because of this specifically, and maybe the cost will be beneficial to us to lease rather than buy. Has anyone looked at that?
Okay, and then Mr. President, Fred Hicks has his hand up again.
Just before Fred goes, Ms. Cooper, the state would not require us in 2 years to stop using these. Mostly those laws will say you can't buy new equipment and for use. So we're probably safe there, but I saw Bill write that down. Mr. Hicks.
Guilty.
I just had one quick follow-up question with the capital improvement on replacements. Will funding be allocated over time for that? So it goes into a capital improvement plan for replacement. Will funding be allocated every year for that, or are you just allocating it at, it needs to be replaced year 10, and then we need to buy it?
Sure. Mr. President, part of what we're doing at a staff level is looking at the creation of what is called an equipment revolving fund. You can probably call it something else, but it's a term I'm familiar with. And what it does is accumulates monies so that when it is time to replace equipment, we are not borrowing, we are paying cash. So we're not there yet. We're beginning to do it. This is going to be a long-term process. I can envision that our needs are going to outpace our abilities, but you got to start somewhere, and that's where we're at. So I want to say yes to your question. We're not there yet, but that is the path that we're pursuing.
Appreciate that question, Mr. Hicks. We'll go to the board now. Director Carlin, please.
Yeah, well, thank you, Daniel and Larry, to you for backing up and revisiting basically a used rental piece versus a brand new piece with a warranty, tier 4 and everything. I like these units as well. They're a real good unit. So I support this decision. Thank you.
Director Grace.
I would just echo Mr. Hicks' comments earlier. I appreciate the detail and the presentation, Bill and team, everyone that had a hand in putting this together. And I do think it is an investment. Likewise, as Jay, at the last meeting, I had reservations about used equipment. We always want to get value. We always want to drill down and get the best cost. But I think for the long-term benefit of the Valley and our staff, giving them the tools they need, I think this is a good investment. So that's all I had to say.
Appreciate that, sir. Director Jensen.
Yes, not having this equipment over the last how many years How many times have we had the occasion to rent one that we needed one?
How many times have we rented a skip loader?
Yes.
I believe we've done, since I've been supervisor, maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 2 years.
Okay. Is that because there's not a great need for it, or?
It was more of a budget type thing.
Okay. All right. Nothing else.
Thank you, sir. Vice President Quinn.
No comment, thank you.
I support getting equipment that our staff needs and can use to help their jobs be accomplished with the right tools. Board, what's your pleasure on this motion?
I move the board of directors authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Birch Told Equipment Company to purchase a 2021 New Holland model U80C skip loader in the amount of $80,680.45.
Second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Carlin. Ms. McEwen.
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
No.
Vice President Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye, motion carries 4-1 with Director Jensen in dissent. Item F, Foxtrot, approve amended and restated lease agreement with Milano Cattle Company. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, President Han. Good evening. The action before the board this evening is to essentially extend the term of an existing lease with Milano Cattle Company and make some relatively minor changes to some of the terms. Milano Cattle Company has been grazing on district property for over 20 years. That's given us a great opportunity to observe their operations. They've been excellent stewards of the land from all that we have seen. And so in going forward with the amendments, I think the main concern and of interest to our clearly fiscal minded public was whether the proposed rental terms were generally at a fair market. So what we did, and what we always do when we enter into long-term real estate transactions, is we seek out appraisals to do basically a check for us. Sometimes if it's a large piece of property, we'll do a full appraisal. This is what was called a restricted appraisal, just to check the market, to make sure that given the conditions out there that we were within a market range. And so we hired the firm of Bender Rosenthal to do that. They did confirm that the price was reasonable given all the factors. And I think it's important to stress the factors because while it looks very cheap to have $4 an acre for 5,000 acres, so much of that land is not grazable. It's steep. And one of the key things for a cattle operation is to have sufficient water, and we provide none. There are some springs out there. They've been relatively dry because of the drought. And so the tenant's actually having to purchase water, which is a huge factor. So when you take all those factors together, Bender Rosenthal concluded that where we are at the, in terms of the rent, was at a market level. In terms of change in terms, the proposal would be to have essentially 2 5-year terms. We're a little bit off the yearly schedule, so it's a 63-month and a 60 term, but approximately 10 years total. The current rent is about $22,000 a year. One of the requests that Mr. Milano made in renegotiating this was that there was a CPI adjustment, but it's based on the, it's an urban CPI index, and it really has no direct relevance to cattle operations, the cost of meat, or things like that. So he has requested, and staff supports, a 4% cap, just in case we get into situations with runaway inflation, that it not over increase the value of the rent beyond really what the market should be. So that is one of the changes, and some minor changes to asking for some additional insurance. In response to board concerns about having flexibility, because this is a large area of the district, and if the district wanted to do some projects back there. Mr. Milano has indicated that if the district would give him 16 months advance notice, that he would certainly be willing to reduce grazing areas if we can negotiate a price so that we wouldn't be locked in. And I think that would be a reasonable time period. Certainly very few projects of a significant scale that would require us to reduce the size of the acreage out there would be done in 16 months. So that would be his request. And if the board supports that, then as part of the recommendation, I would draft up those terms and include that in the lease so that we would give him essentially 16 months notice of any reduction in the leased premises, and the parties would meet and confer and attempt to renegotiate what the appropriate rent would be for the reduction in acreage. If we couldn't come to terms, then the lease would terminate. So that would give us flexibility. Again, that's not particularly foreseeable, but I do support that direction to at least give us the flexibility given the size of the acreage back there. That concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. With that change about the 16 months and a renegotiated price, do we need to bring this back to the board at a later date?
No, if my request would be that you give me that direction, I'll incorporate that into the lease and take it back to Mr. Milano for review, but he was fine with those general terms.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to the public.
Zach Crum,
Mr. Crum. I haven't heard you yet. Unmute yourself. And go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I am deeply, deeply concerned about leasing any land to the Milano Cattle Company and have wondered why we are leasing land on pennies to the dollar when this land should remain solely for its intended purpose, which is recreation. A representative of the Milano Cattle Company has shown an active agenda against recreational interests in BVS common area. Just a bit of history, the western end of BVS drops down to the San Joaquin Valley and is owned by us and intended by the original developer to exist as a recreational backcountry. Instead, what seems to have happened is the hijacking of the land through the lease agreement with the Milano Cattle Company. And just a personal note, I remember back when I was a new property owner going to the BVS CSD office to inquire about the area at the end of Pinedale Drive and being told that everything after the housing on the west end belonged to the Milano Cattle Company. Last year, the Milano Cattle Company and its subleasee, the O'Reilly Ranch, locked gates that were meant to be left unlocked. These gates must be left unlocked because of safety and equestrians and hikers traveling from Sycamore Canyon up to Pinedale Drive. This resulted in BVSA employees, specifically the rangers, to use bolt cutters to remove the unauthorized locks. It should be noted that Section 12 of the lease agreement states that the leasee shall not be sublet without written consent by the BVS CSD, and most importantly, that all owners of property in BVS have the right to enter and use the premises, which for a few weeks we weren't able to do. Lastly, the leasee has failed to maintain established fire roads as defined in the lease. The lease states that the leasee shall maintain all established fire roads within the grazing area. Goat Springs Road is currently in disrepair, and the road that used to connect the bottom of Deer Trail to Pinedale no longer exists. My requests are twice yearly monitoring of whoever leases BVS common area and signage that states that this is BVS common area and no misleading signage that might mislead residents into thinking that common area belongs to a single landowner. Thank you, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to 4 years of thoughts wrapped up into one comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crum. More public comment?
Fred Hicks.
Mr. Hicks.
Hello, I have a quick question for something Mr. Davis indicated. What type of project are we looking at putting on the northwest side of, this leased area that would interfere with the lease?
If there isn't one, it's only to maintain the flexibility in the event that the district wanted to do something.
But so there's been no discussion of projects going into that area currently?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. More public?
Jiva?
Ms. Bieber.
Yes, thank you. Okay, it was mentioned in there about the water service or having water supplied with when there's not enough in the springs and whatnot. The temporary sale of surplus water in section 9D. And it talks about and so I'm wondering, is that potable versus non-potable? Are they getting out one of our fire hydrants or dip tank? What's the cost per unit? Is it the same? I don't know if any of that was detailed in there. So it's the same rate that we're all paying. And then maybe you could tell me it was in there, the cost that we paid for the restricted appraisals. Thank you.
Sure, I can answer those, Mr. President. They are paying actually full water rates. They don't have a discount. And I've encouraged, though, Mr. Milano to work with staff to see if there are opportunities to use non-potable water or other supplies. The problem is getting it there. Even if they were to take from a well or something that was being drained, it's challenging getting it back there. That's the problem they face. They would love to use something much cheaper, but right now they're paying full cost for the water. To Mr. Crum's point, again, I don't have any background on the lockout. Those things should be reported to the district. That had not come to my attention in the review of this, but the lease is very clear that the property is available for passive recreational use. So there shouldn't be those conflicts.
Thank you, sir. Any more public?
Kara Cooper?
Ms. Cooper.
Yeah, I think leasing the land is great because it does help with our fire reduction that we would, that the CSD would be responsible for. So it is saving us a lot of money that way. And I'd just like to thank the board for continuing this lease, and maybe we can get some sheep out somewhere else to help with the fire reduction. Anyway, thank you very much.
Appreciate your comment, Ms. Cooper. To the board, I think, right, Christy, any more public?
No, that's all.
Director Carlin.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Director Grace.
Ms. Cooper really said it all for me. I think this is great fire mitigation, very important, and I think it's a good relationship, and it's worth continuing.
Appreciate that, Director Jensen.
I have no questions, sir.
Vice President Quinn.
I think Jiva requested information on the cost of the appraisal, and I don't think Don addressed that. Do you know what the number was?
I do. I believe, Director Quinn, it was about $2,000, $2,000 to $2,500.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing to add. I like the idea of increasing our fire safety. Board, what do you think?
Move the Board of Directors approve the amended and restated lease agreement with Milano Land and Cattle Company, LLC.
Second.
That's motion to amend to add the point in our motion about the 16-month notice and
Yeah,
checking the price.
right. Yes, as stated.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion on the floor as amended. I have motion by Jay Carlin. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion second by Jensen. Ms. McHugh.
Director Carlin?
Aye.
Director Grace?
Aye.
Director Jensen?
Aye.
Vice President Quinn?
Aye.
President Han?
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Item golf, authorize the general manager to execute a contract in an amount not to exceed $47,738.04 with Pacific Irrigation Incorporated for rehabilitation of well number 9. Mr. Mallon.
Mr. President, that pretty much sums it up. As you know, we have been working to continue to rehabilitate our wells and to improve their productivity. We are currently rehabilitating Lake Fill well number 10. And we had come to the board once before, you may recall, and look to get both wells rehabilitated, 9 and 10, which feed Four Island Lake. But stepped back because we wanted to ensure hopefully a long-term project by replacing the pumps and the motors as well. Those weren't a part of the original scope. What it's done is increase the costs slightly. So our first well, number 10, was at about $41,000 or $42,000. This is at 47. We would get the funds from the Parks and Recreation Fund through the lease agreement we have with the BVSA. We did talk about this briefly at the liaison meeting, and they had indicated, and Wes has subsequently said he'll be putting it on the agenda for their board to approve the initial 75, and then from the subsequent fiscal year, the difference, which in this case is maybe about $12,000, $13,000 that would come from next fiscal year. We'll front it, we'll pay for it, we'll get it done. I think everyone should agree that having the capability to put this water into the lakes is important. So we would recommend approval as presented.
Thank you, sir. Public?
Viva?
Yes, thank you. As you said, it was about 41,779 versus 47,000. So I was wondering, what's the difference, Bill, in the cost? Was it materials, labor, depth of the wells? What drove the cost difference? It's just 6 weeks ago or so. So just curious.
Mr. President, I would turn that over to Mr. Parks. Perhaps he can answer that better than me.
Mr. Parks?
So yeah, basically the only difference between the two wells is in fact the depth. It takes them more time and more material to complete the same process. That's basically it.
Thank you.
Appreciate the question. Any more public?
No, that's all.
Director Carlin?
I have reviewed the quote and matched it to some of the things that the company I used to work for did, and all the costs are right in line with what quote is there.
Appreciate that, sir. Director Grace?
I had no questions, sir.
Director Jensen?
No questions.
Vice President Quinn?
Yeah, a question for Will. I seem to remember back in my hazy memory that there was a time when we were hoping that well 9 was going to be used for potable. And we ran it for a long time going down into the lake. And I guess it was still carried too much uranium or something in it. Is my memory correct on that, Will?
I don't recall trying to flush uranium out of it, to be honest with you, Director Quinn. I know we lost it due to gross alphas, aka uranium, and it's just kind of, we turned it into a lake well at that point.
Yeah, okay, so it's just, how long has it been working that way as a lake well?
Oh goodness, I mean, I would say 6 years or so.
Okay, that's about right.
Okay.
That fits. Thank you.
Thank you. Radionuclides, I think radionuclides was the term, I think, for that. And I've heard mention of the pump motor being replaced as well. And that additional cost went to add a variable frequency drive to the motors. By replacing the old motor with a high efficiency motor, we can use VFDs or variable frequency drives and control the speed, which we only have to move the pump as fast as it needs to move, and then we save a lot of electricity costs. I didn't quantify a lot, but more than without variable speed. Board, item G, what do you think?
I move the board of directors authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Pacific Irrigation Incorporated in the amount of $47,738.04 to rehabilitate Lake Well number 9.
Second.
Motion by Quinn, second by Grace. Ms. McEwen?
Director Carlin,
Aye.
Director Grace,
Aye.
Director Jensen,
Aye.
Vice President Quinn,
Aye.
President Han.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. That concludes our action items. Item 13, information and discussion items, board member training. Ms. McEwen?
Let me bring her up here. This is 2 items regarding board member training. First is the anti-harassment training mandated by Assembly Bills 1825 and 1661. All supervisory employees and elected officials of agencies that provide a stipend or a payment to their elected officials need to take 2 hours of harassment prevention training. It's required every 2 years. District staff, supervisory staff is currently undertaking that. Then the following year, our regular line staff has to take one hour of training. It's available free of charge through Vector Solutions, which is, Vector Solutions, which is affiliated with our insurance provider, SDRMA. It's also available through the CSDA or the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing. We just need to make sure it's the 2-hour supervisory course. And however, if you have had to take this similar training through your employer, let me know and we can see if it's compliant or not. The second one is recommended emergency training. The district's emergency operations plan recommends 4 courses for EOC staff, Emergency Operations Center staff. And then our DPAC has also recommended completion of a 5th course. The Public Safety Committee and the DPAC have recommended to the board that board members also complete this training. The board agreed, and in 2019 has set down the requirement that all board members should take those 5 classes. Director Han has completed his. Director Quinn has completed all but 1, unless I've missed one somewhere. But because we do have periodic changeover of board members, this is something we need to revisit every so often. So just wanted to let you know to keep an eye out from your email, and I'll be sending links and instructions on how to complete all this training.
Thank you, Christy. Director Carlin? Director Grace?
Nothing to say other than I think this is good, and I applaud the previous board for requiring it.
Appreciate that. Director Jensen?
I'll email Christy about this and see if any of my previous training will apply.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Quinn, Vice President Quinn?
No comment.
And none from me. Item B, Bravo, board comments. Director Carlin up first.
I don't have any comments today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Appreciate that, sir. Director Grace?
Only to say appreciate all of the public coming out, even though we are unfortunately back to a Zoom situation. We always appreciate all of the various participants. So thank you, and please keep it up and stay with us. Hopefully we'll be back to public meetings soon.
I agree. Director Jensen?
I have no comments.
Appreciate that. Vice President Quinn?
I have nothing.
Nothing from me tonight. That's item Charlie, staff reports, department heads, finance, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, President Han. The items before you are the finance activity reports for period 12 of the last fiscal year. That's fiscal year 2020-21. Period 12 is the month of June. So this would be a full year's worth now of activity. I do want to point out that these numbers are unaudited. We still are going through our closing process and still have some accounting journal entries to do. But these are the most up-to-date numbers that we currently have in the system. The other activity report is for the new fiscal year, 21-22, period 1, which is the month of July. And that beginning budget, original budget number has been updated with our adopted budget. And with that, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Appreciate that. Director Carter,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Director Grace,
Thank you, Hamid, but no questions.
Director Jensen,
No questions, sir.
Vice President Quinn,
No questions.
and I'm good. Public Works report. Is that Chief Kermode?
Oh, that's me, Mr. President,
Got it.
and I'll be brief. You have our report. If you have any questions, we're prepared to try to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Director Carlin,
No questions from me. Thank you.
Director Grace,
Nothing for me, sir.
Director Jensen.
Just one question. I know the water department has a way of prioritizing leaks and fixing them. I just want to throw out, I hope that part of that is traffic hazards, because that one on North Lower Valley, just across from the ball field, is getting bigger and bigger, and traffic is going on the wrong side of the road to avoid it. So I would hope that those mitigating circumstances would play into the prioritization of fixing leaks.
Yes, they do, Director Jensen. And that leak is actually scheduled to be done. You'll be happy to hear on Tuesday. So it's USA, everything's marked and ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
Great point. Vice President Quinn.
Let's talk about my favorite subject, the dump. Just curious, as you know, the green waste area was getting to be kind of precipitously hanging over. You had a little mountain of stuff there for a while, and little by little, it worked itself down pretty good, and without the gigantic chipper this year. So I was just wondering if how were we able to reduce that much bulk without the need for a chipper? Did contributions to the green waste area just sort of dry up because of the drought, or what do we know?
President, I'll try to answer that. Don Smith may be able to pitch in as well, but I know from my perspective, I had asked Mr. Wiggins to try to move out more of the accumulated green waste and or manure from that side of the facility. And I think he's done a great job. And I would also commend him and staff for the aesthetics of the entire site having been improved over some period of time. So I want to say it has been a conscientious effort to do it without the chipper and without some of the costs associated with that. And beyond that, Larry'd probably have to give us the details, but I know it's been a purposeful effort.
Yeah, well, I can second that. It really looks great with all the flattening out of the broken asphalt and that kind of stuff. It looks nice. I mean, for a dump, it looks nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I have nothing to add. I must have asked for Chief Kermode because my eye caught public safety, which is next. So now we're on the public safety report.
Good evening again. This is the July Public Safety Report, and staffing is status quo at this point. We have one police officer vacancy, one part-time police officer vacancy, and of course the police chief vacancy. You can see the numbers in the report. One thing that caught my attention in looking at the August statistics, which I just had received, is traffic citations are significantly up in August over July. And my eye caught, we wrote 4 for cars passing school buses with the lights flashing. And off duty on my own car, I saw 2 more where they went right past the school buses. So that's been high priority with school restarting in August. As far as reported crime in the month of July, there was 1 reported mail theft. It was at Cumberland and South Lower Valley. There were 2 traffic collisions during the month. One was actually in the CSD parking lot, and the other was at North Lower Valley and Fawn. There were only 2 arrests in July, and again in August, there's a significant increase in arrests. There was 1 misdemeanor arrest, which had to do with illegal drug possession, and 1 felony domestic violence arrest. That would be the general report at this point. So I would entertain questions about that. And then we have a second piece this evening as well.
Okay, questions about the report so far, Director Carlin?
Oh, thanks. Thanks for your time and your officer's service.
Director Grace?
Yes, good evening, Chief. I see you have senior wellness checks bolded, conducted by phone and admin staff. Is that different than how it's traditionally been done, or I'm just wondering if you meant to highlight that?
I think it was highlighted just to indicate that it was not done by the sworn staff.
Okay.
So traditionally, in the old structure, the dispatchers made those calls throughout the morning and afternoon. And now basically Carolyn Hartman is responsible for that, unless she's being backfilled by Becky or Debbie from the CSD. So that's performed by non-sworn staff.
Gotcha. Okay. I appreciate the clarification, and thank you. Thank you for your work.
Director Jensen?
Yes. Good evening, sir. So the July report, there were 6 citations.
That's correct.
And how many of them were moving violations as opposed to non-moving?
I would say that, as I remember, 1 was for driving, crossing over the double yellow lines to pass. 1 was texting and driving. 2 were for no registration in possession. 1 was an unregistered vehicle. And I think 1 had to do with brake lights. And at least in some of those incidents, the stop may have been for a moving violation, but in discretion, they cited for the equipment violation rather than the moving violation.
Okay, so there was only 1 moving violation ticket written then for July.
Well, I think you may know better than I, but I think the texting while driving carries a point with it as well.
It doesn't, but that's okay.
Okay.
And then in early July, I submitted a request for a inventory of the police department firearms. Is that something you're working on?
Yes, we have been working on it since that time.
Okay. Any idea how long that's going to take?
I would anticipate there should be something in writing, certainly no later than the end of next week.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Vice President Quinn?
I have nothing. Thank you, Chief.
Right, then I echo that. Thank you, Chief. General Counsel report.
Nope. We have a second part to this one.
Thank you. You're right. Second part. Part 2, Chief.
All right. And I didn't put it in my written report, but for the month of July, just huge thanks, especially to our VIPs for the July 4th weekend, helping keep everything orderly and safe and treating folks to a good, safe event at Cub Lake. And in next month's report, we'll have a rundown on National Night Out as well. So the next item has to do with response time calculations. Question came up at the July board meeting. Question had also come up from Director Jensen. So I had prepared a staff report to go with it, just to walk through what the process is. Again, this was a process that was created by Chief Melanson. I never included response times during my prior term. So want to be totally transparent about how it's done. And if we make an error, it's on the side of not showing an artificially reduced response time. And that's the theory behind the things that we filter out. So just to go through it quickly, we start with the Excel spreadsheet that we get from KCSO with the call count. And that's always included as part of your public safety report anyway. So we take that spreadsheet, we copy it out of that spreadsheet into a blank spreadsheet so we don't screw up the original spreadsheet. And when you look at that spreadsheet, and there's sample of the May spreadsheets attached, you'll see far to the right side, there's a dispatch to arrival number. And that is reflected in seconds on that spreadsheet. So what we do is we go through and delete all rows where the dispatch to arrival time is 0. Self-initiated activity should be a 0. Somebody walks into the front counter, it's a 0. If we included all those zeros in the calculation, it would artificially drive down the response time. So we delete everything with the response time of 0 to err on the side of caution. And then we delete activities that appear to be officer initiated. And we laid out those in the staff report. An officer calling in 10-6 or busy, an officer on a 10-14 or courtesy transport, an officer going onto a code 5 or a stakeout, or a code 6, a self-initiated investigation, going out on a warrant service, patrol check, or traffic stop. So we pull all those out on the attachment that would be, you see highlighted in yellow on the screen. And that gives us the next page, which is the filtered call count. So in Excel, you simply auto sum the number of calls in that center column, and you auto sum the number of seconds in the last column. And then we do simple math, and we divide the total time in seconds by the number of calls. That gives you a number. Then you divide that average number of seconds, divide it by 60 to convert it to minutes. And then that gives you minutes and a fraction of a minute. And that's where I was originally lost on Chief Melanson's calculations. I couldn't figure out what that last step was about. So then we divide that or multiply that fraction by 60 for 60 seconds. And that gives us the final average response time. So that's probably as clearly as I can explain it step by step on how that calculation is made.
Okay, board comments for part 2 of his report, Dr. Carlin.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dr. Grace.
This is good information, very helpful. Thank you, Chief.
Director Jensen?
Yeah, so you mentioned that the last time you were here, you didn't have an average response time in your public safety reports.
That's correct. I don't remember that being a category.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I don't think it started until the October 2020 public safety report that it started showing. Do you know why we started reporting it?
I do not.
Okay. And this 3-minute 44 average response time that this calculation comes up with, that includes a response time for a hit and run collision with injuries of 48 minutes and 40 seconds, and a response time of 39 minutes and 5 seconds for a child endangerment call. And then it has some really short times that, you know, you mentioned that you took out all the stuff that has a 0 response time, like patrol checks and traffic stops. But there are a bunch of times in here that are impossibly fast, like 2 calls for malicious mischief that end up averaging 19 seconds each. I don't think I can pick up a microphone and respond to a call in 19 seconds. Same thing with the 7 barking dog calls at 51 seconds each, and check the welfare calls at 52 seconds each. These seem like just impossible averages to have over a specified number of calls. I'm just curious as to what these calls are from. Are they responses to phone calls? Are they responses via the MDC in the patrol cars? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I understand your question, and as far as dropping numbers out of the calculation, there has to be, I think, a justifiable strategy as to what numbers are removed. So zeros clearly are obvious, and anything that is officer initiated. I have to say that I did not look at individual calls for service, and certainly if there is an anomaly on a particular call, I know this afternoon in talking to the sergeant, one of the things that he pointed out to me, typically with the computers in the cars, what should happen is when you're dispatched to a call and you arrive at the call, if you've listened to the East Kern Sheriff's frequency, at times it can be extremely busy. A lot of times it's shut down for emergency situations. So the officers will hit the on scene button or the arrival button on their computer in the car, which should timestamp their arrival. Unfortunately, Sergeant Hurst is aware of at least a couple times on his own calls where that button never reflected at the comm center, either because of the location in Bear Valley or whatever reasons. That at times could reflect a longer than normal, longer than accurate response time, as far as 19-second or a 58-second response time. I would have to look at the individual calls to see what the circumstances are.
Right, and I mean, if you're going to use a statistic like this that ends up being misleading once you factor in the real response times in there, and not take away these ones that should be readily apparent. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, 2 calls, 19 seconds each. That can't be right. Before we use stats like this, we've got to look at the individual numbers that make up the final product. Otherwise, we shouldn't be using it. It's just not prudent.
I understand your concern, and I'll certainly go back, or as we move forward, I'll look at any that appear to be abnormally low to see if there's a circumstance that explains that. And at the same time, if there's one that appears to be abnormally long, obviously depending on location in the valley and such. Sometimes that might be the explanation. And one thing I don't necessarily like about this process, the agency where I spent 26 years, we separated them out. We didn't have an average response time. We had average response time for code 3 lights and siren emergency calls. We had response time for priority 1 calls. We had average response time for priority 3 calls, and then response time for priority 4 calls. So our emergency response time was typically 2 to 3 minutes, and our priority 4 calls may have been 2 to 3 hours. So to try and average them all together is a little tough. Other than the fact, the good news is we don't have a lot of what I consider the lights and siren response calls for the most part. But I understand what you're saying, and certainly as I prepare the August report, I'll look for any anomalies, so I can explain them if they stay in the report.
Fantastic, thank you.
Certainly. Vice President Quinn.
I have nothing.
Appreciate all your hard work, Chief. General Counsel report now.
Yes, no report this evening. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Questions for General Counsel, Director Carlin,
None for me, thank you.
Director Grace,
Nothing.
Director Jensen,
None, sir.
Vice President Quinn.
Nothing.
None for me. Thank you for your hard work too. General Manager report, Mr. Malinan.
Mr. President, members of the board. Let's see, first thing will be update on our tree grant. We have about 225 parcels that have been treated. We've expended about $550,000. We're essentially halfway through. They are in a pause right now because of the tinder dry conditions. They don't want to have anything sparking up there. They will be back the next month or so. I did talk with the forester, and we're looking forward to them getting back and wrapping up. It will probably not get done this calendar year, but we'll probably get into 2022. We did, I think, as Chief Kermode mentioned, have a emergency operations center exercise. Is something that we had committed to with the DPAC chairman, Mr. Glasser, and he was there. It was a good opportunity for all of our staff to get into the EOC, understand what roles we may be expected to play should it be activated. And we'll continue to do this and continue to get better. So it was a good start, I thought. As you know, we have a number of things. I know the public's asked about a hydrogeologic report. We're going to work with Trans-Tech, hopefully get a scope of work and maybe a quote to do that, i.e. What is the aquifer looking like? Where are the aquifers? Are they different than when they got mapped 30 years ago or something? And what sustainable supply might we get? We're also going to work with them to further the assessment of the water system, so we can understand best how to triage what we pretty much understand we need to do, which is we're probably going to need to change out all of the service lines. I think Will Parks would tell you that's really our biggest problem, but we do have main breaks. We have mains that we believe will most likely need to be replaced sooner than others. And then for those that remain, need to come up with a game plan of when and how to replace those mains, so that hopefully we're not improving and repairing roads and then having to go in and tear them up again. So we want to kind of pay attention to the water, and if we do some work, hopefully we'll put the road repair on top of it. So We're talking with TransTech about that so that we could get their assistance in bringing the plan outline forward to you and talk about it with the community. We are talking with TransTech as well about doing a higher level brainstorming of the entry gate area and how we might improve the flow of traffic there for the residents through the gate or gates or multiple gates. And I do hope we can improve the merging of the two lanes as they come up Bear Valley Road, things like that. And so we're talking with TransTech about that project. They were on site for our stormwater pollution prevention plan. We walked the area here, so they're working on that as well. Chief Kermode and I are wrapping up, and I've got to do the final wrap for it, but the police chief recruitment, so we can send that out to agencies and or individuals. We are eligible for and will apply for and will apparently receive a grant for Parks and Recreation. It's a per capita grant throughout the state. For us, it amounts to about $200,000. So I would ask the board and others to give some thought to how we may want to use those funds. And I do believe we can arrange to use them in conjunction with the association for Parks and Rec, but the limitations will come later. I'm looking for the brainstorm ideas. We did report, I think, on the liaison committee, or maybe President Hahn, if you don't mind. I mean, I thought it was a good meeting. It was good to be back together. And we have some areas that we need to sit down together again at a staff level, I think, to work through and talk about issues. So that's good for us to be able to do it again. The generators update, we're pretty much all connected up with the exception of about 3. A couple of them that had to go back to the vendor or the manufacturer. So for the most part, we're going to be ready to go for the PSPS. I don't know, Daniel, how far you got today, but for those folks who, we talk about our ability to fix our roads and make repairs. What I think will be an excellent example will be the work that needs to be done on Jacaranda, where a water leak pretty much washed out the road. And so Daniel Haggard and his crew have been out there. They were supposed to get a bunch today done, and I don't know, Daniel, if you want to chime in, but here's my take on it. He did go out to get a quote by a contractor to have that work done. It was $50,000. As I recollect, it was $8,000 for us. So I'm excited that we're in the position to be able to do those kinds of repairs. We have the roller, we have the hot box, we'll have this new skip loader, etc. And that's what we're looking for, is to be able to do a better job on patches and repairs and things. This is almost like a reconstruction. Let's see, guardrail phase 3 is going out to bid. I did get a phone call from Mr. Crum today. If he's still on, I didn't look, but the field people had asked about our participating with them. They were going to get a fire reduction grant, and along with our colleagues at Alpine Forest, the Stallion Springs, and Golden Hills, we were all kind of going to be beneficiaries of that. And for us, field was going to work on easements and or right-of-ways, reducing the material there. They got the grant. And so we're looking forward to getting together. Zach and I will meet here in a couple of weeks, but it means that they'll have a significant amount of money to apply to our properties, our common areas. So we applaud their effort, and we look forward to working with them. And it's in excess, it's $1.3 million grant. So good for them. They did a great job. We're continuing to pump well 31 and 32. to flush them out. We're still putting water into Four Island Lake as a result of that. Hopefully it'll clear up soon. We've been at it for what, maybe a month. Wells 9 and 10, obviously we've got number 9 moving through tonight, but number 10, they've already commenced. They pulled the pump, they've pulled the motor. They'll be going in and then cleaning and so on. And then relative to the question at the very beginning of the evening on transfer station and recycling, we are going to have a meeting with our colleague at Kern County who's in charge of recycling. I know Larry has had meetings and discussions and looked at opportunities with field. I don't think they're going to pan out. So we are looking for other ways to both divert, but to maybe process our household and our recyclables in a maybe different way. So I hope that answers that question. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Director Carlin.
Wow, great list. Lots of work. Appreciate your efforts. I do want to add one item to your list is the reimbursement and the repair of where an automobile hit the jacaranda guardrail just above where Daniel's repairing, and which actually kind of saved his life over there. I just want to make sure we repair that guardrail and we get reimbursed from them. Those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, sir. Director Grace.
Great report, Bill. As Jay said, a lot going on, and hopefully a lot of this will pan out, and we'll see some good things here soon. So thank you.
Director Jensen.
Yes, sir. Just one question. Has the office gone back to full hours yet or no?
We are always on full hours. What we did do, and maybe maybe I misspoke. If you're talking about relative to kind of COVID concerns, we, yes, have been back. Staff that otherwise would have been working remotely, they've been back for several weeks. Yeah, but the office was always open.
No, I understand that, but I mean, open to the public. Are we still
Oh,
open?
it was open to the public as well.
But from just 10 to 2 though, right?
No, we've been on an 8 to 4:30 schedule.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Vice President Quinn.
Good report, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick clarification on the 1.3 million from that grant that Zach Crum was working on. We're only going to get a part of that. That's 1.3 is for 4 areas of Tehachapi, and we're one of 4 areas. So we won't be getting the whole thing. But everything was really good to hear. Thank you so much. Future agenda items. Ms. McEwen, would you like to read through those and to confirm if we added anything?
Okay, in October, it's time for the annual reappointment or appointment of new DPAC members. Let's see. The regular board meeting for November falls on November 11th, which is Veterans Day and a federal holiday. So we will be talking to the board about their preference on rescheduling that meeting to perhaps a different week. And then we anticipate in November bringing the benefits package to the board for approval. And I did not have anything added. Did I miss? I don't think I missed anything, but does anyone?
Anybody remember? I don't recall anything needs to be added. Anyone?
Mr. Chair or Mr. President, I have one area, and that is CIPs. So as the board and maybe some of the public recalls, we adopted a 5-year CIP for water, and we've had to effectively modify that for our PSPS efforts with generators. So things got moved out a year, and so we need to revisit that and approve it. Meanwhile, as part of our rate studies for sewer and solid waste, we had 5-year CIPs. So we'd like you to formally approve of those. And then secondly, we want to present and at least expose the 20-year CIP that we've been working on. I think both the finance and infrastructure committees have seen it and been pleased with the effort, but we want to begin that conversation and kind of show you and everyone else what it means when you begin to do that level of planning. So I'd like to add that on.
Okay, thanks, sir. Comments from the board, final comments? So a reminder that September 11, there's a ceremony at Cub Lake Flagpole by the Bear Valley Springs Veterans Group. And I have nothing else to add. So I call this meeting adjourned at 8:02 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone, for your involvement.
Thank you.
Thank
Everyone
you.
have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye, Don.